the way, on the more serious note, right, let's just start right there, the most obvious topic, just because even though you've had many of these discussions, obviously you've mentioned yourself since fans are always trying. If people don't know, the problem Maniac has is he's actually also, like, I'll give an analogy that people aren't going to understand initially. He's actually in a similar position Pimp was for many years, which is because Pimp's Danish, people assumed automatically Pimp will be just insanely biased to Astralis on every topic. But that also meant if he ever actually disagreed with the sort of consensus on Astralis or what Danish fans thought, then all the Danish fans attacked him and were like, what the hell are you loyal? Like, you don't think Astralis is good? So basically, he was going to get wrecked either way. So if you don't know, one of the reasons why Maniac himself often mentions on social media, for example, his thoughts or like some sort of contextual framing to why he thinks something about ZywOo is because he either gets people telling him, you're just biased, you just think he's the best or whatever. But then the second you ever critique him and actually say, oh, you did have a bad game there, you probably should play better, then all the ZywOo fans like, what the hell? You're hating on him. So you're always on the hot seat, aren't you? It's a tricky one, isn't it, Maniac? It is. It's a tricky one.
No, you're absolutely right. But the only line of defense I have is that I will never go and say something that I don't stand behind.
Right.
Like, that's just the line I draw. Right? And it comes with some W's and it comes with some L's. That's just the way it is. I'm never going to cater to a crowd. I just don't do that. So I think this is the only way to make it work long term.
Sure.
And this is the only way I can fully embrace when something great happens, the likes of the FaZe and Astralis game at EPL, I will fully embrace it. The Spirit game, I'll fully embrace it. But then when shit hits the fan, then I owe it to myself, to the fans, to the community, to actually be objective about what's happening. Like, there's nothing worse about seeing someone going to the desk and doing like some cognitive coping mechanism not to criticize.
Sure.
This is the worst. This is the absolute worst. If I ever do that, I want everyone to call me out on it. Like, if I'm not capable of going to the desk and say, yeah, well, actually, he fucked up, and this is what happened, and this is why that's not okay. If I'm not capable of doing that, people need to call me out, because I think I despise it. I despise it when we do it. So that's the line I walk. Let me know. I don't think the fan really liked it when I predicted Spirit to win against Vitality, and I have no regret for that prediction. I
think it was reasonable. Yeah.
I mean, at the time, based on what we had seen from Spirit, the build-up, the fact that Donk was once again unleashed, all of them seemed online. Their games was beautiful. I covered most of them in the group stage. On the other hand, you have Vitality, who very seemingly are far from being at their top. They lose to 9Z in a best of 3, and I see this clash coming up, and I'm just thinking, okay, my hypothesis is that Spirit is going to deliver the same Counter-Strike we've seen them in playoffs. They've done it in Katowice. There's no reason to change that. Vitality is a bit iffy. Well, whether I like it or not, I think it's a Spirit win. And I was obviously wrong. We are yet to figure out like who Spirit is at the very, very, very top level, right? It's not like they have a million stages being played. But that's just one of the examples. Like, yes. I don't want to be, I mean, a little bit for the meme is cool. And I think it's great if I'm at the desk and I show a bit of personality and a bit of love for ZywOo and Vitality.
I mean, as you say, you can do it jokingly in the same way as Yanko, like we all joke he's biased to Nico or Kasad or someone. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
That's all right. I think that's all right. But I still need to be able to stand by what I say and not just fucking do the ostrich and put my hand in the sand and say, oh, Vitality is the best team in the world. And no. I don't want to do any of that. I think the desk would lose all its flavor.
By the way, a couple of things on that. We'll do the Spirit thing in a second, obviously. But in terms of the actual angle, that ZywOo obviously was kind of shit on that last map. And if he wasn't, they would have won the tournament. Like, that's just the reality. Like, they would have won IM Dallas if he'd have had... It wouldn't even have been that much bigger a game. He just had to sort of, like, turn up a little bit. He just kind of... That was, unfortunately, like, he just fizzled out at the end of the tournament, right? The problem I have with this topic goes like this, Maniac. If people don't know, this is also where people have really misunderstood my position. They think I'm just, like, anti-ZywOo, right? But actually, my problem on this specific topic is... I'm actually probably a lot more favourable to what ZywOo fans think on the topic of like how good is he at the moment, because if you ever go and look, it's like a lot of people have started to notice that like the current ZywOo has like a trend that's a bit different from the old one. The old one used to be the guy where I would actually say the reason why he wasn't considered like the same, not like level, but the same like iconic player that Simple was, is because Simple's style was like the best frag movie style ever. It was like, like the joke is he would go for like a 1v3 that you should probably save the AWP on, and then he wouldn't even just do it like a normal round. He would like try to like shotgun AWP a guy here and then do a 180 on someone. The kind of shit Modesty does now, where you just like, I guess you can't just do that if you're the best player, right? ZywOo back in the day to me was the guy where it's more like, it was that meme of like, you think he isn't having a great game, then when they hit the scoreboard, you're like, how's he got 20 kills? And then you realize he's just got like 2 boring kills every round, and you never had the 4K, so you're like, you didn't think there was a big pop off, but then you realize, that's just how good this guy is. Like, his base level is to just get like 20 kills basically. basically. Whereas actually the modern day ZywOo, if people have seen, he's actually had loads of games where he started like he was going to flog the game, and he'll be like, fucking like 3 for 9 or something like that. But then what he'll do is, as long as Vitality doesn't get knocked out, he'll just have like an insane streak of rounds for like 5-6 rounds at the end. By the way, usually closes the map out if they're still in the game. But he'll just go like, like fucking 13-4 or something over the last 5 rounds, and then he goes ham. And so in a way, right, I don't mind it totally, because first of all, he actually has that super ability where he can just pick himself out of the fire, whereas I think most players can't do that. Like why people go on about confidence, momentum and all that shit, because everyone wants to start well and then be in the right frame of mind and then know how you're working, and all the jazz that applies to normal people. So my problem is this, right? I do think there is an argument to be made that like, it's not like you only focus on the final or whatever match they lose in and then go, right, well, if you were bad in that game, then you used to fraud and you weren't good. It's like, because at the end of the day, if he's getting the numbers he's getting, that actually implies he's carrying so hard in the other games. Like every group stage, basically, just shitting on everyone completely. And he is, by the way. Everyone's seen some of these series. He's having series where the numbers are completely bonkers, where every time he does it, everyone who's a ZywOo fan understandably goes, he's still the best player in the world. And that's why the discussion exists of him. If Donk plays enough, Donk and Modesty, it's actually quite a good convo, isn't it? Especially now that they can all win tournaments. So whenever that happens, right, I feel like the ZywOo fan just goes like head in the sand. Like, doesn't matter what happened in that final or that semi or whatever. Like, look at the overall numbers, which is like, well, it does still matter. Like, if you want to be the best player in the world and the best of all time, you got to also do it in the big matches. But I also feel like the hater then, just like I say, only tunnels in on the bad game, and it's like, no, see, and it's like, bro, when you say that someone's a fraud, like that other stuff did happen. Like we did see those games in the group stage. Like, we've seen those games in like quarters and semis. Those were real matches. Like we didn't imagine them. So where are you at in this particular topic, Maniac? Because to me, you still have to put this guy in the conversation for best player, even if you want to pick at holes. Because we're having two different conversations, right? We're asking, is someone like the absolute best player to ever play CS ever? Well, obviously the standard's going to be pretty bonkers for that. We're asking, is someone extremely good right now? Where are you at on this topic? Because I feel like there's a lot of emotion around this one.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's pretty emotionally packed as well, because I'm never gonna pretend like I'm unbiased, right? I wouldn't say I have a friendship with the guy. That's not even true. Like we bump into each other, we talk, but I genuinely just care about the character, like these parts. So I am a little bit biased when it comes to the character. That's just a fact. People know about it. There's no need to pretend. But I still try to remain objective in like the current situation, and I think he's done enough this year to be in the conversation of best player in the world currently, but I don't think he's the front runner. I think he's barely done enough to stay alive. I think Katowice being the fail that it had been, and unfortunately the health issues he's got at the major, which we will never really know how much it truly impacted. That's hard to see.
Sure.
I think when you fail, and I'm using that word with air quote, but when you fail Katowice in the major, thus you cannot just be the front runner. Not currently. I don't think that's enough. These were really 3 complicated months. So I think he's done enough to maintain the conversation between Donk, Modesty, and himself. I think Modesty is probably the front runner right now. If I really, like, gun to my head, if I really had to choose someone, I'm sure we'll talk about Spirit later down the road. But the problem I have with ZywOo is the following. I agree with you. I know that the haters do absolutely tunnel vision. Like the haters take a map, and from that map, they extrapolate their argument. And if you do that with the grand final of Dallas, your theory is absolutely solid. Like this is a perfect example, because you can construct this idea in your mind that, hey, the pressure was going up towards the grand final, and as the third map arrives around the corner, this is where the pressure is at the maximum, and this is where he disappears. So it all makes sense. He's fragile, he's weak mentally, he disappears from game, he can't stand the pressure. I think that's one angle, but I talked to him in Dallas on the Sunday night after the grand final. And I just very genuinely, very kindly, I just looked him in the eye and I said, hey, like, were you stressed? Like, were you stressed? Was that an intense moment? And he genuinely just told me, no, I wasn't. And I didn't feel like he lied to me.
Okay.
He had no reason to lie to me. Like, I wasn't coming on to him as like a fucking fanboy, or I wasn't annoying him or anything. It was like a very respectful conversation. I just said, hey, like, you know what happened? There was this interesting tweet that someone put out, and I'm not going to be capable of referencing it because I forgot the user, but someone basically pointed out that the CT side of ZywOo recently has been the places where he's got the worst ratings he's ever had in his career. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, there's 2 ways to go about it. You can either say this was the third map of the grand final, so pressure got to him, and that's messed up. Or you can say, is it just because like, what the fuck is he currently doing on that CT side of Nuke? And this is not to say that he's absconded of responsibility. I personally think when you are as good as he is, you should never be in any game plan that isn't made for you in any way. That's my personal take. But I'm honestly not sure. We've talked about it in extenso in a couple of podcasts where I do think he probably will let a negative atmosphere get to him. I think that's the case, and that's probably one of the reasons why he can maybe disappear in these moments. But I actually don't know if that's all there is to the story. I think it might be just a little bit reductionist to just say that, when the pressure is high up, he disappears. Because if you actually go and you look at his records and you look at some of the events that he's performed on stages with thousands of people watching him against the best teams as well, like there is a body of work where he actually delivers. Like,
of course, yeah.
Full finals against FaZe, World Final as well.
Dude, one thing that tilts me is I was one of the first people who came with this angle that like ZywOo often. I never even said he's bad, bro. I've never ever even said. I just said he underperforms in like playoff games in prestige. Remember, I said it was prestige tournaments. People took that and they took all the extra info. And they just took it as ZywOo sucks in every playoff game, which is like, what, bro? That's such a where I started was pretty bold in itself. You taken that like a million miles, guys. Yeah. Like the fuck?
Exactly. But there is such an argument to be made, and like the lack of success he's had in Katowice, Cologne.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Very unfortunately for them, their major run had nothing historical to it.
Yes.
Like there's nothing historical to it. It's just and this isn't to say that they would not have beaten better teams.
Oh no, of course not.
Maybe they could have, but as it stands, it doesn't give you enough to just say, he's done it. It's more like, well, they had to beat these teams, and of course he slid on everybody, and that's great. But that doesn't alleviate any of that pressure. So unfortunately, when I don't think I am equipped to prove people wrong about the fact that he can choke in these moments. I'm not. I don't think I have what's needed.
No, it's not possible. Yeah, of course.
But I do wonder if there's more to it than that. When all his teammates always just say, you know what, he's not really bothered by anything. He's just playing Counter-Strike. What if that was true? Like, what if he actually just plays Counter-Strike and just like, not even robotically, but just like generally, organically just plays the game and is goddamn good at it and that's it? Then there might be some other elements to be looking at. And again, as I said, he bears a fuck ton of responsibility in that. Like, I think it is criminal for me to hear that he isn't exactly comfortable in whatever's happening right now. Like, this should never be the case. And
I've even got an angle for people. I'll spin an angle for people that they might not have thought of as well, which is people are also, because you notice, like, almost all these conversations can't escape the, like, fucking gravity pull of the conversation of is he the GOAT or is he like the best player ever? Because if that's constantly what's having to like impinge or drag at every single statement we make, then it makes the conversation so much more difficult, and it sounds like you're just flaming him. So I'll give you an example right now of the first thing I think of when I see this happen, which is, right, everyone else then does the thing where if they're a ZywOo fan, they just start trying to hate on all of his teammates and be like, look, they're not that good either. But it's like, there is not, it's not fair, guys. It's because if you go and look at nearly all these finals or semis that they've failed, it's not that the teammates played great, but they almost certainly would have won the match if ZywOo played better. That's the problem. So on that one, you have to ask for more from ZywOo. But I will say this though, which is, let's say this is just like a thing that happens, like you say, like he's not someone who's like obsessed with the game and thinking all the time. He's just a guy who just plays. Sometimes he has bad games, sometimes he has good games. If that's true, then I can tell you, this right now is one of the things that's really irritating if you ever follow the sport of basketball at the moment. I know it's not your shit in the NBA, but like in the NBA, there's a massive culture on the internet now of fans who do the same discussion. They just talk every day of like, who's better, like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or whoever the fuck they want, right? They do these contrasts, but all they ever do is compare stats. And they do that thing where they act like you're just like, it's a one-on-one sport. So like, well, if he played him, then he'd do that. And so they do this whole thing, right, where they've conflated the idea of being clutch or like a big game player, as we say in our game. They've just conflated that with being the best player, because in their particular case, Michael Jordan happened to also be all those things and the best player. So what they don't seem to understand is you could actually be the best player and not be the guy who closes the fucking game every time. Like, I mean, if people don't know, I would even say that like there have actually been some very, very great players in Counter-Strike history who weren't even necessarily that great in the clutch. They just did all the other frags in the game. Like they get the first 3 kills in the game for you, or they kill all the people in the middle of a round for you, whatever it might be. I mean, I'll give you an obvious example. To me would be Forrest. Like Forrest's whole shit is like early on in the game, or taking a duel with someone. Like get right to the one who closed the game. Or exist wins the clutch. Right? You know what I mean? So what I would say is this: another angle you can also take if you are Vitality is get a fucking big game player in. Get in like a Rain type player or some Impact type, but some guy who does win clutches and wins under pressure, etc. Something to just relieve some of the pressure on ZywOo, you know, or keep you in a game, you know. Because I do think that's the area where I blame the teammates of ZywOo. Is a lot of them actually aren't that experienced, as I pointed out on some past episodes, or they're just people like, I mean, Spinx has his own issues in this sense. Like, the real problem I think right now is this: Spinx and ZywOo have sort of some similar problems, which is they look so fucking good right until the match they don't, Maniac, and then they just go so hard in that match that if it ever happens to both of them, you get these insane matches where you're just like, why were they supposed to win? They couldn't win with this.
I wouldn't put ZywOo and Spinx in the same category. I think Spinx is worse than that. Like,
that's fair.
I've been harsh on him.
Sure.
But if you actually go and you look,
he doesn't have the same scrutiny on him, so people just don't notice.
No, he doesn't have. But you have to realize, like, he was named like the 5th best player in the world last year, and I don't think he's anywhere near that. I do think that Spinx, whenever they're playing like group stage games and all, he has an incredible ability to bash people. Like, holy shit, he's gonna farm the hell out of like easy games and all. But if you are looking through the microscope of, hey, this is not a playoff game, are you ready to stand up? He actually does have an inability to perform at his best in grand moments. And again, this is like, for me, it's always a complicated conversation, because if I go on a desk and I have this sort of argument, it's gonna be very easy for me or for people to tell me, you're just trying to defend ZywOo. Like, this is all that's all you're doing here. Like, you're just coping here. It's got nothing to do with it. Two arguments can coexist and be valid at once. Like, they're not mutually exclusive. You can say ZywOo disappears at times in extremely important moments, which we have witnessed in Dallas, and you can say he's got another star player with him that notoriously fails to perform his best Counter-Strike. These two statements are not mutually exclusive, and this is where it really hurts, because just as much as I cannot make this third map of Dallas go away, and believe you me, the ZywOo hater will never. They probably already printed it and have it as like a t-shirt in their room or something. But now, imagine Inferno if Spinx actually plays Counter-Strike. This is a 2-0. The game is over. It's a 2-0 with ZywOo having probably at the time 1.4 rating in the grand final. You snap it in 2-0, and the entire story is different.
Yeah.
It was, oh my God, this was it. This was the tournament. ZywOo bested Donk. Which, by the way, made him look like a kid at the time. Bested Donk, goes on against Maniac, he triumphs of all these foes. Wow, what an event. Full arena, thousands of people, 100th IM. Like, this was right there. It was right there. And, okay, well, you mess up Inferno. Spinx has a couple of incredible failures, incredible moments where he's basically a lurking, which is the equivalent of a fucking fish being in a sea, exactly where you're supposed to be. Cannot convert some of these kills that are gifted to him. So, all right, you go to nuke, and then nuke goes to shit, and ZywOo disappears, and that's a reality. But then it's hard to not play the game of what if. Like, what if that third map hadn't happened? And this is where it gets really complicated to separate things, because you cannot make it sound like it wasn't here. But also, holy shit, like, wouldn't that been great to just close it into? I don't know. I'm a bit conflicted with that. And you were mentioning also about the clutch situation, you know, how to use it. This is the one thing where, if you pay attention to like ZywOo's T side and CT side, this is where like the starkest difference is going to come out, the starkest contrast. ZywOo's rating on the T side are much better now, because he finally has stopped giving his life away just to find an opening for his team when they're struggling. Thank God. I've been asking for it for so long, because you would see Vitality at times in the past being a little bit sort of in shackles, not exactly knowing how to win T rounds. And then so ZywOo would just do the selfless thing, which is, okay, I'm capable of finding this 1-for-1. No one really is. Let me go first. I'll find the kill. I'll be traded. And he would end up the half with like 10-10 or 11-10 scoreline, whatever. Now he lets people go first. Like, oh, you go ahead. You give me the entry. You give me the trade. I'll be playing these clutch situations. So on the T side, I really feel like he's figured out. Like, he has figured out, or Vitality has figured out, or both parts have figured out where he's supposed to be to have the maximum output. This is great. That's a W. That's a success. I love it. Now, I feel like that thought process has to be put onto the CT side. And you mentioned Maniac, and I swear to God, Maniac is the best example of how you can utilize someone's talents on a CT side. Holy shit, G2 have absolutely, I mean, it's not just G2. Monacy is part of that process, but they have completely masterminded, like, what kind of setups do we need to have? How much movement does he need to have? Where can he go? When can he go there? How do we rotate around him? They've completely nailed it. Like, it's beautiful to see, and he delivers all the time.
Sure.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.